Hello and welcome to live post-match reaction to the Blues versus the Sharks. And the Sharks won this one an amazing 40 points to 63, over 100 points in this game. And it was 6 tries each. So even though the score was a big difference, the number of tries was actually the same. And that'll be one of the key talking points probably now. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, a podcast, YouTube channel, Twitter account and website bringing you the best in rugby predictions and opinion. And this evening, joining me for his first time is David. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, Paul. How's it going?
Good, thank you. Good. So early on, the Sharks just couldn't really win any of the kickoffs, kept making mistakes, but being let off the hook by the Blues, making more mistakes, really.
Yeah, it was a bit of a weird kind of first 20 minutes. It's strange because the Sharks just looked like they had looked against the Reds very early on, and the Blues looked like they'd looked all season. So, yeah, it was not looking like it was going to be a 100-point game, put it that way.
No, and in those first 20 minutes, it ended up being 13-0, because the Sharks did something that we've not seen happen recently, which is they were kicking threes and taking all their opportunities to score points.
Yeah, funny you should mention that. We'll get to that later, I guess. But I thought at the time, like, oh, what a novel approach, actually taking the 3 points. Considering the Blues in the first 5 minutes, I think they turned down at least one, but they're in the first 5 minutes of that game, they're in the Sharks 22 twice. And came away with no points. It was just strange. And then, Sharks up 13-0. And I still struggle to see other teams consistently kicking for touch in that situation.
Yep, and I mean the key thing there was every time the Sharks went into the Blues 22, they came away with points, and that went through the whole game. I mean, you could probably. I mean, I've lost count. I can't really count how many times the Sharks scored points, but my guess is that probably only about two or three times did they go in the 22 and not score points.
Which 18 points. So yeah, I mean, massive driver of the game. Them winning is just taking those three when they could.
They did, and then the Blues hit back with an amazing try. One of the sort of tries the season kind of style of wonderful offloading, lovely running lines, etc. So yeah, I thought it was a great, a lovely try by the Blues. They actually suddenly the offloads clicked and the players were right where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, very much against the run play. But I thought, one of those spectacular Blues tries, which we know they're capable of. And you thought, okay, now it's game on. And then it's, I think around the 20-minute mark, they just the aggression and they had I wrote down they went into Jake the Muss mode. They just really started going at it, and it was quite different from that first kind of 20 minutes of the game where they were barely walking back when they were retreating. So something clicked for the Blues, and you felt like here we go. It's usually this happens for them at half time, and they've done it 20 minutes early.
Well, yes, and but they were giving up penalties, and one of the things we saw on Friday night between the Chiefs and Highlanders is we only saw penalties that were by the defending team, whereas we were seeing the Blues go up attacking penalties as well in this one. So they were just turning the ball over and just not getting continuity and giving the Sharks just too many opportunities.
Absolutely, yeah.
So they kept on. As we said, they kept on kicking. The Blues, gave up another penalty for offside, and that was on 24 minutes. 4 penalties, 3 of which have been kicked for points. So not only were they giving up penalties, but they were giving up penalties in the wrong part of the pitch. We then saw Akiriwani do what he's great at, which was strip the ball from the back of a ruck and beat 4 players to go around the outside. Unfortunately, just getting his foot in touch. So missing out on the try there, which I think that was one of the key moments that could have changed this game. If he'd got in, if the Blues had actually scored from that line out where they'd kicked to the corner, then they would have been in it. As it was, they made that error, followed by giving up penalties, and suddenly the Sharks in the other half, poor tackling, saw a try straight under the sticks, and at 7:23, after just over half an hour, it was the writing was on the wall at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And Akira Ani had a pretty first, I guess, 60 minutes of that game, just amazing, playing the role of kind of three players. But even he can only do so much. And how many players did he beat off the back of that scrum? 6 players, or something ridiculous. But at the end of the day, he's not a Lamb or an Arso or a Naholo to get into that half a metre gap of the wing. He's not a winger, and he needed someone there, and they just weren't there. There wasn't any urgency. So yeah, agree. Key moment, and he'd done all the hard work, and there was just he needed some support from his team. That's throughout the whole game.
You're right. Well, the scrum, not Alliance. I got myself mixed up. And have all the backs on the right hand side, no one on the blind side at all, where the scrum's gone sideways, created a large blind side, no one awake enough to run round, was disappointing. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's not clever running.
Yeah, but big moment in the game. Completely agree.
It was, and then my note down here after that try was the Blues not going through the phases, and that was the problem. They would do a couple of phases, then try and grub a through or kick it or turn it over. I can only remember once in the whole of that first half where they actually went through phases and built up pressure. They just weren't trying to play sensible rugby. Yeah,
and I think the those halftime kind of coach interviews are always a little bit usual stuff, but they did talk about patience, and there was no patience. If they weren't breaking the line within the first couple of phases, they were trying something else. It's like just holding to the ball, and that's I think what the Sharks did successfully all game. Putting aside that the Blues' defence at times was just awful. They did hold on to the ball at the key moments and then made the breaks rather than trying to make the breaks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, though, there was, obviously the difference between these two sides was kicks and was taking those points. But I thought at 26-7 up, just before half time, having a scrum penalty, I'd have gone for the corner and tried to kill the game off at that point. But they didn't. They still kept on kicking sticks.
Yeah. Well, and I think even at 26-7, you're not necessarily going to write the Blues off at home, or I guess more so a New Zealand team at home. It's not a big enough margin, despite the Sharks' kind of record, which is now I think the most successful record against at Eden Park for a non-New Zealand side. Oh, there's one other now.
No, it's not that. The Sharks, their last few wins have been on the North Shore.
Oh, right. Okay.
So they've actually not been at. So
it's just against the Blues, not in Eden Park. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So the Blues have won their last 10 at Eden Park against overseas opposition, but the Sharks have have won at have won on the North Shore, which is a separate discussion for another day. But I think the North Shore should be the Blues' home. It's much correcter size stadium for them. Anyway, that's a massive tangent. So yeah, well, maybe I see where you're coming from. That it's not a big enough margin. I would have preferred them to have gone for the corner there and gone up, sort of tried to go in at 7:30 rather than 7:26 at half time. And we'll probably get onto this later. Well, actually, I'll probably talk about this now. They carried on kicking all the way through that second half, and I think there were definitely times where they should have started kicking to the corner because they could have got the try bonus point. True. I actually thought about that rather than just adding 3 extras.
It's true. I mean, but as that Sharks side, you're looking to turn around your season, and you're looking at you got a tough tour ahead with New Zealand opposition, and you're probably looking at maybe trying to pick off the easy beat Blues. To be honest, out of that New Zealand conference at the moment, do you just really go for that win and hope you pick up a bonus point, luckily, or maybe a bit of a fluke win against another team, and you come away from that tour of New Zealand with probably more than most other teams would. Yep, bonus point, good point, but I think they were they had the right mentality going into this game, was just to get that win, and short of a yellow card, which we'll get to, I guess, in the second half, they would have got that bonus point easily.
Yeah, but when the Blues had a yellow card, so on 70 minutes, they still were kicking penalties. And you're like, the Blues were a player down. You're already 28 to 43 up. Go for that corner. Go for the try bonus point at that point. I think, yeah, personally, I disagree. I think there was a time when the Sharks should have flipped and started going for the tries. But that's a personal opinion.
Yeah, that's true. I'm good.
A lot of the things were even in that first half, but the main one that was turnovers and penalties. 6 penalties to 2, turnovers 7 to 4, and the tackling of the Blues down in the 60% mark. And that was really, but they had all the go forwards that just couldn't put continuity together, which was the big difference.
I think the Sharks had them at the breakdown a bit as well in that first half. It wasn't helped by some, lack of urgency getting to the breakdown, but it did feel as though it was more so the Blues defense that let them down more than anything else in that first half.
Yeah, and I did notice, and I'll put up the stats that Kano missing 4 tackles was the biggest culprit in this.
Yeah, I don't know where he was that game actually, apart from missing tackles. It's and I guess we'll talk about it later as well. But I'm not sure that the experiments worked with the midfield either. You got, well, I'd say your best player in it at the moment is Akira, but where was Rico for most of the game? It felt as though while he was drawing in 3 players a lot of the time. He's your best player. It'd be better to have somebody else trying to draw a couple of players in and give him just a half break rather than him trying to create breaks for people that just aren't going to do anything with the ball. Yeah,
it's. We saw Moala move out to the wing on Nanai's injury, and Rico moved out to 13. So he was playing in that. He wasn't playing quite as close as his jersey suggested. Whilst the commentators seemed to think that Fiani had a good game, I was less convinced. Some of his kicking was appalling, and a key point during the game. So the Blues had just pulled themselves to 28-26, got themselves in the lead, and then Fiani tries kicking for territory twice, and fails, basically gives the Sharks territory, and the Sharks come and score a try, and they never look back from then onwards. But we should talk about that golden period for the Blues. So when the Sharks lost a man, but it really was because the Sharks were down to 14 that the Blues were able to score.
And I think that anytime the Blues have little peaks in games where they just look unstoppable, and it's the age-old problem with the Blues. They can't put that even close to 40 minutes, let alone 80 minutes. And for that, it wasn't even a 10-minute period, was it, that they scored 3 tries? I think it was 8 minutes, and just sensational. I mean, that Perafita try was just ridiculous. It was sublime. He just cut through the entire back line. I don't think even anyone got a hand to him. He just ran the perfect line. And when you consider what I was looking at half-time and how despondent the Blues looked, that yellow card was so huge. And I can't remember if the Blues actually got back in the lead at that point or they came, within a couple of points. But you just thought, this game is over. The Blues will just, following that, they will just, the Sharks were starting to bicker amongst each other, and you thought they were all good to go.
And yes, I agree with a lot of those points. But the first try, Akira Iwanigo scores out wide because there's a winger missing. The second try, Tuipulotu hits a gap, and then there's no one between him and the try line because the fullback stepped up to cover for the wing. So those first 2 tries were directly because there was a player off the pitch. Otherwise, they'd have to have done some more work to gain those tries. So the Perafita's try, yes, wonderful.
Individual brilliance, but yeah, the Blues are momentum players, aren't they? So you thought that with that kind of how quickly they came back, that they would, you felt that they had momentum to keep going, and how despondent the Sharks looked, that they'd lost all that hard work from the first 40 minutes. But then, the Sharks were not the team that got schooled by the Reds the week earlier. They looked at a different team. Absolutely,
and if they got back to 15, I say those 2 poor kicks by Fiani meant that they got they got territory, hit the line, released the player, and got back into that bit of physicality that we saw in the first half, offloading, getting their hands free, getting the passes away, and scored a couple of wonderful tries. And which should probably sort of pick out. I mean, I'm not sure if there are any points you want to make about the following try, about the rest of the tries. Otherwise, we'll go and talk about a few players now. But to me, it was.
Oh, it was just chaos after that. It was just I don't know what I was watching, to be honest. It was just, but there seemed to be a bit of consistency in all the tries. There were big lads going, running hard straight lines up the front, usually breaking a couple of tackles and either making the try from there or getting off some kind of just ridiculous offloads to support players running great lines, and it was just fantastic rugby all round. And even the Blues later in the game were, their 3 constellation tries or whatever it was, just all great tries. So I don't know. I'm not sure what happened in this game. I don't know if the defence of both sides just switched off for large portions of the game, but entertaining stuff.
It wasn't so. I mean, the defending from the Blues was appalling. I mean, 56% tackles, you deserve to lose. So only making 34 of 61 tackles is appalling. The Sharks, 98 tackles from 132, so they have to do twice as many tackles, but they're up at 74%. So still not great tackling. You want to be in sort of mid 80s is kind of the level you should be at, but still definitely better than the Blues. And also their discipline was much better, which was with only 6 penalties all game to the Blues 10, of which, as you say, 18 points. So that's what 5 of those were kicked through the post. So giving up penalties in the wrong part of the pitch as well.
And Trainer with that pretty loose yellow card. Was it in about the 65th or 70, between 65th and 70th minute? That was the end of the game, really. Yeah,
it was. And I put a tweet out at that, on 64 minutes saying, that's basically the game over. And as we said on when we were texting backwards and forwards. So some of those big players you were talking about, I want to call out basically the back row of the Sharks. Walt, 9 carries for 31 metres. Dupria, 10 carries for 39 metres. Metubu, 7 carries for 34 metres. 3 guys who got through a lot of work getting over that gain line and making those meters.
And urgency all game and didn't gas out. So yeah, amazing.
That's very good point about not gassing out. I hadn't really considered that, but yes, they did manage to play all the way to the end of the game. Whereas we look on the other side, I mean, Kano makes 13 carries, but he only gets 19 meters, which shows you the big difference. Akiri, obviously 10 carries for 42 meters. Tuipulotu, 8 carries for 48 meters, but most of those meters was from that try, which was about 30 odd meters out. So and to be fair, but there was definitely a big difference. I mean, Bosch was about the only person who really kind of broke free and loose frequently by the Sharks, because they were definitely a lot narrower than the Blues. We can tell that by the fact they made 80 passes for 95 runs, which I'm not quite sure how that exactly means. There's a lot of pick and goes. Whereas we compare that to the Blues, where they made 173 passes for 141 runs. That you can see the ball was going through the hands a lot more for the Blues, but it wasn't getting themselves actually any further up the pitch. As the run meters are pretty similar, both over 500. So they were more effective from that. Also defensively, and you're talking about these guys getting gassed, or not getting gassed, and this is kind of amazing because I'm going to be talking about the same names again. Walt, 17 tackles, missed 1. Dupria, 14 tackles, missed 3. Again, a big workload for those two, both attacking and defending.
Yeah, and some big tackles in there as well. There was one, I think, which probably created, I think, the Sharks' first try, where tackle and Blues player took him back looked like about 10 meters and led to their first try. Not just big tackles that stopped the Blues, but actually changed the direction of the game completely.
Yep, and that's this. A lot of this actually was a gain line game. Some games are about sort of territory and possession. Other games are sort of about kicking. This one was about when either side was getting over the gain line, they were making big yards and going and getting tries. When they were stopped on the game line or behind the game line, then both of them seemed to mess up and turn the ball over. Cool. The next game is about to kick off. So the Brumbies versus the Waratahs. So any final points you want to?
No, just amazing game. I don't know where the Blues go from here, but been saying that for so many years. It doesn't change. And I guess on this holy season, our praise to our Lord Bowden Barrett, praise Bodes, and have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you very much, David. And yeah, to me, the where the Blues should go from here, which is don't think they will, because they're going to continue to try and play this fast and loose game, is they need to spend the next week just doing defence and making their tackles and making themselves hard to defeat, because at the moment they're just too easy to score against. And whilst they can score tries, they need to stop letting in so many points.
Yeah, and a big difference between the Sharks tonight and the Blues. The Sharks, terrible last week, didn't actually change their team makeup this much this week. And look what they did. The Blues, terrible last week. How many changes they had? 7 or 8. And terrible this week. So stop screwing around with the formula and just let it settle and try and get better. Yep.
So thank you very much, sir, for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll be having you on plenty more times as long as you want to come on. I've been Paul, the guy behind Driving Maul. Always up for good old rugby chats. So comments down below or at Driving Maul on Twitter. Yeah, don't forget to subscribe button down below and hit the bell as well if you want to get updates about every single video, or you can hit my face there, and there's a box there on the recording for my latest video. So enjoy whatever rugby you are watching.